What's up, everybody, and welcome to Prepper Talk Radio. We are the podcast for the prepared, and we have a fun show tonight. We just had a fantastic food preservation conversation with Peelies and Petals, the one and only, the original Sarah Thrush. She just dropped her book, Preserving with a Purpose. So listen, that's going to drop next week. So listen to that podcast. Go check out her book. She's a delight. Tonight, man, we're going to get into it. We're going to break the boundaries of the dollar, so to speak. We're going to talk about some different ways you can prep on the cheap, and you can prep on the sweet, sweet nectar of awesomeness and really go for broke. But as a reminder, we are sponsored by AMP3. Go get your first aid kits at AMP3. It's American made, all American sourced, and these guys are fantastic patriots. Go support AMP3, amp-3.net. And use the code PrepperTalk to save 15%. Guys, welcome to the live. Paris, Shane, I've been waiting all week for this. This is one of my favorite things I do every week. Thank you for being here, and thank you to our amazing audience. You guys are already lighting it up. Make sure you hit like. Make sure you hit share. We got our usual suspects that are usually early and on time and waiting for us to go live. Have already joined us, but thank you guys for lighting it up. We're going to talk. This is probably one of Paris's favorite things, budget-wise. Prepping on a budget, but then also the baller prepping, like cranking it out. And welcome to those new people in the group that are joining our stream for the first time. So, Shane, this was kind of your idea. This was you were the dog and pony show that got this one going.
Well, what's interesting though, I actually had the idea of, what if I had to start all over again, what would I do to build my preps? What would I do first, second, third? And I was like, because when you asked earlier today, when you asked Scott a couple of days ago, whenever it was that we said, hey, what are our plans for this next one? And I was like, that's what I thought. And then Shane represented and said, hey, let's do a one where it's like starting prepping, but like if you have only got a couple bucks versus if you've got thousands of dollars and a huge budget. So the range.
Yeah,
so I'm excited about that.
What kind of inspired me to I guess suggest this is, I accept if you join our Facebook group, right? Let me go over here. Everything got all messed up here, so I apologize. To our Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance group, I am the one who accepts the members. And there are questions that are asked, basically, where are you at in your process of prepping and so forth. And about 4 out of 10 seems to be the average, to where they say, I'm just getting started, need a lot of help. And I mean, that's pretty high. I mean, 40%. And depending on the week, sometimes it's lower, sometimes it's higher. And so, and just like you said, Paris, I wish I could look back and start over and say, okay, I would start here, I would start there, I wouldn't do this, I would do that. And this isn't necessarily a show about correcting mistakes, but more advice. Okay, if you're wanting to start, if you're starting, where would I start? And the thought with, okay, if I only have a small budget, which I know money is a big issue nowadays. I mean, it always is, but even more so now with inflation and so forth. But that's kind of where the idea came from.
Well, what's cool is that both of my daughters got married this year. And so my daughter, who lives here in Utah nearby, and her husband, they were over at our house for Sunday dinner. And we got into a conversation a little bit about food storage and preservation and stuff. And I said, they asked, like, hey, Dad, what do we do to start our food storage? And so this kind of leads into this topic, which is cool. And I said, well, the first thing you want to do, of course, is to buy the things you already eat that you can rotate. Start with, some people don't have a huge budget, so they're not going to be buying weeks and weeks at a time. But I would say if you're just brand new starting into prepping, find out, what do you eat for breakfast every day? And then just buy one more box of cereal or one more, box of oatmeal or whatever you buy that can be stored. Just buy one more every week that you go, and then build up 3 or 4 boxes of breakfast, 5, 6 boxes of breakfast until you have whatever it is. And then do that for lunch, and then do that for dinner. And lunches and dinners are often intertwined or interchangeable. So you're definitely going to want to do the things. So that's what I started with. I said, buy the things you're already eating. Start with breakfast, start with dinner and lunches. And then from there, once you get that going, now you need to make sure. I told them about water storage, make sure you have water bottles, and then longer term water storage. And then the next thing I would say is get a really good 72, 96 hour bag. Those are kind of the beginning basics.
Build your own 96-hour kit.
Yeah. Build your own.
Right. It's so much cheaper. You don't end up buying all the weird stuff. And it's funny because we just had a comment. Rebecca, I'm going to throw this in there. Yeah, a lot of people will buy those cheap bug out bags on Amazon, and they will, once they've learned a little bit more, they're like, oh man, most of the stuff I'll never use. Most of the stuff isn't really good. Most of the stuff, or the bag breaks, right?
Mm-hmm.
100% with you on this, Paris. Like, start with what you already eat. I kind of I put a list together. Number one, if I was only starting with $100, first thing I would do was actually calculate what I have. Look at what I have as far as water and food, inventory it, and then I would go get a library card if I don't already have one.
Mm-hmm.
And I would grab some books on foraging and wild medicinals. And then I'd go to the grocery store after I checked those books out, because those are free. And then I'd get some of the food, and I would spend most of my money on food. I would look at all the containers I have and see what can be repurposed for water storage, right? And not invest in a lot of water storage bottles or anything like that right now. I would just repurpose some things that I've already used that are food grade containers. And as I use my normal food, and like, for example, if I buy 2-liter bottles of soda from time to time, save those and put water in them, right? Clean them out, put water in them. Good way to store water on the super cheap. You're not paying for stuff. Make sure you rotate that stuff out. But that's super cheap, super easy to do. But then I wouldn't spend out of that $100 right away. I'd buy some dried food, some canned food, and then I'd probably buy some activated charcoal.
Yeah, because I think you're absolutely right. The first step should be figure things out, right? Gather info, put info together, do some research, get on YouTube, download, information. And I mean, that's where I would probably start again, right? Is slow down, step back, calm down, and say, okay, where should I start? But instead, as part of that, I think it's important to get a kit together, right? We talk about the 96-hour kit. I just call it a go bag, right? It's just a survival kit, whatever you might want to call it. And there are certain items that you can put in that bag and stay under $100. Some really essential items. So that's kind of a list that I put together of quality. I'm using air quotes, quality items, because if you're only spending $100, you're not going to get a whole lot of quality stuff. But it's a great place to start, and you can still get some pretty good tools, so forth, components that you're going to add to your kit. And likely you have a lot of the stuff around your house anyway. You're just about putting them together in one place. And then as you learn, then you're going to add, and you're going to exchange this for that, and you're going to get better quality stuff.
Well, I was thinking that somebody with only $100 to their name, that's pretty rough. And you're definitely going to want to buy some food if you have that, because that's all the money you have. But let's say you have when I sit down with somebody and I want to talk to them about, like, what do they want to do with their finances and their future, the first thing is get a good, clear idea of your income and your expenses, get some free up some cash flow. And let's say you only have $100 a month. That's where I would say start just every week building that pantry. Just every week, buy a little extra. Maybe, maybe split it in half, where you're $50 a month, you're buying extra food, $50 a month, you're buying, the next knife or the next flashlight, or you're saving up to buy the better backpack, so you want to realize that it's okay to take time, and don't panic that you have to be ready for every scenario and emergency right now, but also take the time that it may take you 5 or 6 months to do something like that. So I when I first started in prepping, I actually did a price check on Amazon, created a wish list of like the best I
Mhm.
went to YouTube and I listened to other people, like what is the best knife, the best flashlight, the best bag, the best. I did a wish list and I looked at the dollar amount and I was like, I got to multiply that by everybody in my family. Holy, there's no way.
Mhm.
Thankfully, I'm self-employed and I am faithful and believe in God and miracles and things like that. And I said, Heavenly Father, if you help me find the money, I will use it to be prepared and have my family get prepared. And that's one of the, whether you use the faith, financial faith, or you use some other kind of, magical ways to get you to get where you need to go. But the point is that I was able to get what I needed and I've just grown from there. So I would say start, if it's just $100 a month, that's where you go. And like I have a lady who just got divorced and she's really struggling. And she said, Paris, what do I do to get my food storage? And that's exactly what I told her. Just buy an extra can every time you go to the grocery store and build up slowly. Get a week, then a month, then 3 months. And then from there, start looking at your staples, your long-term 6-month storage, the bulk number 10 can stuff. Because after 3 months of stuff in your pantry, unless you're going to get into canning, like we just had a taco with Sarah about, most of that stuff that you can buy off the shelf at the store and rotate doesn't last much longer than 3 months anyways.
Yeah, that's true. Well,
It's funny because like as we were talking about this, I thought another thing, and there's on my list as well, is hitting up the dollar store on your first round of $100 and build yourself a little $20 first aid kit or less.
Yep.
Like I built a really good first aid kit for $20. Now, does it have a tourniquet? Does it have advanced blood stopping stuff? No, but I've got the essentials covered, right? And then as I have that, like now that I realize we have another month of another $100, start stockpiling the things that are most important. Going back to food, going back to water, expanding the first aid kit. Okay, now I'm going over to AMP3, buying a really good IFAK at one point, right? I slowly get the things that you need as you need them. But I would definitely, and this I would do probably as a word of caution, I would make sure I'm not going on YouTube and following anyone that is doing fear and propaganda prepping. You guys have probably seen the channels. They're all over the place. The fear porn prepping, like don't follow that because they will get you to buy stuff that you don't need really easily. They're good at getting you to depart from your money. I would follow this channel, Prepper Talk Radio. I would go download the free resources on our website. We've got an emergency planner kit on there now. We've got 96-hour checklists, and we have an inventory tracker. Like those are the three staples I tell everybody when they're trying to get better prepared. Like I'm emergency prep coordinator for my ward for my church. And I said, hey, happy National Preparedness Month to our church group on Facebook. And I'm like, if anyone has questions, I'm here to help. And it lit up. And I've been answering questions. I mean, what are we at? The 11th today. And it's been a week or 11 days of nonstop questions in there. And again, it's the 11th. So I also want to make a quick sidebar, point out, remember those who we lost on 9/11. And why do we prepare? So we can try to avoid those types of situations.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And when hardship comes, because it will, the better prepared you are, the less of an effect that hardship will have on you when hardship comes. Because hardships are going to come, whether it's war, whether it's a job loss, whether it's, whatever. I mean, I just want to also reiterate, thanks for bringing that up, Scott, just to remember, the world changed on 9/11 in a lot of ways for the good, and some political ways, maybe not so much for those that follow a little bit that stuff, but we're not getting into that. But just the world changed, and it hopefully it woke us up to the point where we realize that we need to become more self-reliant.
Yeah, one of the first comments that Mike put up here, and I totally agree with this, is one of the first things that if you don't already have is to get a good knife, get a good cutting tool. And I think a fixed blade is the way to go. And you really can't beat More Knife. As you can see, it's they're from between $10 and $30 to get on Amazon. And they're a really great knife for the money. And you'll end up replacing it eventually. but it's really hard to go wrong, and especially for the money. So if you don't have a good cutting knife, I would spend, personally, I would spend more than that, obviously, on a good knife that you're going to keep the rest of your life. But if you're constrained by budget, more knife is the place to start.
What's funny is like as a scoutmaster, that's all I carried whenever I went camping with the scouts was my Moore knife. I've got the same Moore knife in my bug out bag or in my go bag. It's been in there. I've moved it from bag to bag as I've evolved, and that one's never been. I rarely, if ever, use that one. But my backpacking, my camping one, I've had that thing for a good 18 years, and it's a great knife. I mean, they're good knives, and I don't use it all the time because it's my camp knife. But yeah, on a budget, you can go a long ways with some good quality. Moore knife's a great one. There's another question in here is, asking about like Augustin Farms. They're okay. I would stay away from anything that's mixed packaged. So like pre-made meals,
pancake
single
mix,
ingredients. Go ahead, Shane.
Pancake mix and so forth.
Yeah, definitely get the single ingredient types of number 10 cans are great, but the mixed pre-mixed meals stay away from.
Right. Well, in particular, like like you say, the pancake mix, any bread mixes, they have a relatively short life, and as I mentioned, I had to throw out quite a few lately as the cans were bulging and such. But I think if you stick to the, like I say, the individual components, the pastas, the flour, the sugar, and they make some dehydrated, freeze dried meals as well, which I think are going to have a good shelf life. I've had a good experience with them, but they're not as tasty. You're going to need some other spices to add to it, right? So,
great.
So I would say that a lot of times I get the question, should I buy a freeze dryer? Well, those are $5,000 to $6,000 for a really good one, and most people are out of the budget for that. And my first question is, do you have a 90-day pantry? If they say yes, then I say the next question is, do you have water on hand in storage for a month or two, if 3, if possible, then I say yes. If they say that, I said, do you have a solution for power if the electricity is out? If they say, yeah, I've got a generator. And then I say, okay, do you have grab and go bags for anybody if your house is burning down and you need to grab and go and have some resources for a few days, or maybe there's something happening you need to grab and go? Yes, I have those things. Okay, then now is probably the time to start thinking about a dehydrator or a freeze dryer. I feel like freeze dryer is definitely cool to have and it's okay to have. However, if you're on a budget, get it after you've gotten all those other things. Do you guys agree with that?
Oh,
yeah, absolutely. And I guess it really depends on if you're a gardener, if you're a homesteader and you're making a lot of food, producing a lot of food, maybe at that point, it's going to make a lot more sense to get your freeze dryer sooner, right? Or if that's, the way you live, you make a lot of food, you want to can it, you want to freeze dry it and use it for leftovers and food storage as well. So it's definitely very personal, I think, that way, though.
Sounds like we're jumping into the $1,000 to $10,000 range.
Yes. Let's stick back to the 100 for a bit.
So yeah, definitely. We'll talk about that fun stuff later.
Dang.
Yeah.
I kind of kept us in the $100 range, saying don't do those bigger things until you've got the $100 stuff.
Right. Yeah.
I just don't want to get everyone thinking, oh, we're moving on. I just want to wrangle us in. We're herding kittens. That's what we do. That's who we are. But yeah, the simpler the better. You don't need to buy number 10 cans of pasta, like just the dry pastas, right? You don't need you can buy regular bag pasta. You shouldn't be storing a lot of the stuff for more than a year anyways, right? Most of the food you eat, you should be storing what you eat and eating what you store. The big the freeze dried and the big number 10 can meal stuff later, get that later. Go buy the emergency storage kit from the LDS.org or the Church of Jesus Christ Latter-day Saints storehouse. You can get your wheat, some beans, a bunch of different staple stuff for super cheap. It's the most affordable number 10 can single item foods, right? Single ingredient cans that I found.
Yeah. I think a friend of mine did a cost comparison where they went to Costco and did it all themselves. But if you, and that ended up being like the math was less than buying it. But time is money. And if I have to spend hours and hours canning when I could just go and buy it for just a couple dollars more, to me, that the time saving it adds into the reality of that. Those storehouses that the LDS Church has it's actually quite wild. That when I went down the one here locally, they always talk to me about how there's so many people who aren't necessarily members of the church who come to those storehouses to buy their food storage. And so you don't have to be a member of the church to buy food storage from those locations. And it's really good, really high quality stuff. And it's very well priced. So definitely hit that up when you get to the long-term storage. And it's not you could buy 6 cans, number 10 cans of most everything they have. I think there's some of them you could buy the whole case that's just over $100, but most of them are under $100 and you get 6 cans. So I think that's a really good deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I guess staying in the $100 range, the next thing I would get after a Mora knife is a ferro rod, a nice thick, like thickness of like this pen here, really high quality ferro rod. And you probably got one right there, Scott, huh? And you get those for under $10, somewhere around there. That thing will last you, I wouldn't say a lifetime. It'll last you a long, long time. And you use that use the back of your knife to strike that. You use the back of your Mora knife to strike that. And obviously we talk about the survival rules of 3. Shelter is number 1 on that list. I mean, relatively. And fire is a form of shelter. And so that would be my next item on the list for under $100.
I agree. It's funny because we've talked about lighters over and over and over, and I've actually got one of my lighters here, and I keep a lighter. I usually have in here some fire tinder to help start, but lighters are great. They're $1 to $3 to start, but
Bic lighters in particular. Stick with the good Bic lighters. Don't get the cheap ones. They don't last.
They crack and they leak and they evaporate because
they fall apart.
Bic lasts longer, but the ferro rods, get a good ferro rod, man. I feel like I can start a fire faster with a ferro rod than I can with a lighter. And I've always liked this because rain or shine, I don't have to worry about it. It works. It just works. I just got to keep my tinder dry.
You just don't lose it. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got so many of these everywhere. Okay, so you got your fire starter.
Yeah, another thing I would add is quality Nalgene water bottle. Right, make sure you have that. And Nalgene's not that expensive. Maybe, I guess if you get a large one, maybe $20. I guess I could Amazon it here real quick and see the Nalgene bottles. But Nalgene is the brand I prefer. They last for years and years. Tried others and they just don't last. Let's see here. Nalgene. Yeah, $15 for 32 ounce, I think here. $16 for 16 32, 15, 32. So wide mouth, small mouth. That's where I would go next is have a quality water bottle.
Yeah,
I think here's a great comment from Rebecca. She's like, you can get a 50 pack of Bic lighters for $50 at Sam's Club, right? So
split that with your family. Yeah.
If you've only got $100 and you see something that's a great deal, think to yourself, okay, do I need all these? Yes or no? And if you don't, but you're getting such a great deal, can you resell some of those to other people in your preparedness group and give yourself a little bit more budget, right? You're still being cost effective.
Mm-hmm.
Great thing to do, right? I would also, this is the other part of this, if you're prepping on a super tight budget, also go through all the stuff you don't use, all the stuff you've been storing for a long time, like get rid of it, sell it. And honestly, hop on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist and look for resources and used items as much as you can, because man, you can save a ton of money.
Yeah, my brother found a whole food storage thing for really cheap on Facebook Marketplace.
Right? Yeah, I got a 5-year a 6-month supply of food from a guy that was moving that I found on Facebook Marketplace. He's like, I just bought a whole bunch of stuff. I've almost given it away. And I'm like, I will take it at that price. And he just bought it last year and he's moving. So it's like, I'm in a great situation. I also have a neighbor This is also great. Get a hold of your neighbors. Find out who has stuff. I have a neighbor who just found out he's got food allergies and was giving away some really good Mountain House freeze-dried foods, number 10 cans. I got probably 15 cans for free. I was a deal I could not pass up.
It's like $60 a can or something like that.
Yeah, that's the best stuff. So network, especially if you're on a budget. Network.
Yeah, and then of course the local classifieds will typically have stuff for free. Usually not great stuff, right? I don't want that free couch that's been sitting on somebody's lawn for a week in the sprinklers, right? But occasionally you'll find some good things that pop up there.
Tools, water bins. Sometimes, like I found water containers as a garage sale, stuff like that. Hit all those up because you can find some really great deals and get some really good things to help increase the longevity of your survival, right?
Another thing I did for a budget was like paracord. I wanted to have some paracord, and you could go buy a 100-foot paracord for 10 or 20 bucks, whatever it is. But I actually ended up buying a spool of 1,000 feet, and then I cut it myself. And I ended up getting a way better deal by buying a big 1,000 feet and then cutting it up. And I think I cut it up into 700 square feet, and then I did like 650 foot cordages, and because cordage is important. You use cordage for everything, you know. I mean, paracord is not something you're going to be rock climbing with necessarily, but shoot, it's as strong as it can get for most of the stuff you'll need. And unless you're
Bear Grylls.
Yeah, apparently he can do. But I'm just saying that with paracord, you can buy the big spools and then cut it up, and you can just burn the edges with your Bic lighter and keep it from fraying. But that's what I would do if I were going to get some cordage. Well, that's what I did. So of course, it's what I would do.
That's a good idea. Yeah. Volume and bulk. And then
the other thing that's cool about that is that, like, let's say, for example, that maybe you don't have a large family like I did when I bought the 1,000-foot spool. Maybe you have some friends and you're like, hey, let's go in on this 1,000-foot spool and we'll each get 100 feet out of it. And then you could probably sell the other, a couple other ones for $5 or $10 cheaper than what they get at the store, but then you kind of get some of that money back. And that's a really good idea. Like you were saying, Scott, earlier about the Bic lighters, to either have it for trading, bartering, or sell.
Yeah, absolutely. Now stepping up to the $1,000 level. Say you've got a budget. You've sat down with Paris and you figured out, we can pull $1,000 out of savings and put that toward preparedness. Of course, I would still stick with at that price level. At that level, I would still stick with the basic tools we went over, and maybe upgrade them a little bit. But still, that More knife is going to last you a good long time. And then look toward water, like water filtration. The issue with water filters is they have a limited lifespan, right? So they need to be evaluated for what you're going to use it for. Is it a backpacking filter? Is it a gravity filter? Is it a Berkey, which can bust the budget pretty quickly if you add that to your $1,000 level. And maybe that's because we use ours every day. Like Rebecca uses her freeze dryer all the time. We use our Berkey every single day, so it's been absolutely worth the money we put into that Berkey. But I think a quality water filter, preferably a gravity fed type that does a lot of water for the family, would be my next ad. And that's you're probably talking $100 on something good like that.
Totally. One of the things that I realized was that as a financial planner, one of the things we would talk to people about is putting together an emergency fund and setting aside cash for job loss, cash for just any type of, car breaks down, something like that. So what I realized was that if you're going to have an emergency, let's say tomorrow you lose your job, well, you're still going to have to eat. And I thought, well, instead of putting a bunch of cash in the bank or in a savings account for food that you would buy, why not buy the food ahead of time and have food storage be your emergency fund? Typically an emergency fund is going to be several $1,000s or $1,000 or so. And so I would say, like, one of the reasons that I felt fully comfortable about finally buying a generator was, well, if the power goes out, I'm not going to be able to go to the bank to get cash to buy stuff to candles or flashlights or whatever. Why not buy a generator that I already have on hand with the money that I would have for those emergencies anyways? So I basically turned my cash into an energy resource,
Mhm.
an emergency resource, and
Yep.
which what it was designed for anyways. So now I have a tangible, a generator, and that's something that I thought about. And the generators at Costco are $700 or $800. So once you've got yourself squared away with those first initial things we talked about already, now you've got $1,000. Now it's time to think about even power,
Mhm.
and ways to back up. If the power goes out for several days, what are you going to do to keep some of the lights on, some of the things going on in your house?
Well, that's when you really got to think about, okay, what are our medical needs, right? Think of those first. Medical needs. Do I need something for a medical device for someone in my household? Definitely make sure you've got backup energy for those. Like I have a CPAP. Do I have to have it? Not necessarily, but it makes my life 1,000% better if I
Mhm.
have it, right? And I'm not risking death every night when I sleep. But I think, and I also wanted to share this because like I was about to say the same thing on water filters. Like you can get the Berkey filters and not the Berkey containers. If you're on a budget, like this is even better than what I was going to say. I've got a couple food grade buckets that I've turned into a backup filter gravity fed system too, but I've got a Berkey. But then this is even longer lasting, and you're not going to have any plastics to ever deal with. But a Berkey, build your own Berkey, 2 stainless stock pots, stack them, use the filters that you can get online. It's way cheaper. You'll probably be $80 into it. Way cheaper. I like
Absolutely.
that.
All right. So the next thing I would add, as we spend a little bit more dollars on preps, is I would really work on establishing, first of all, a 2-week pantry. That should be well less than $1,000, and then probably move on to that 3-month pantry. I would still stick with the basics, the stuff you eat every day that you're going to rotate, like Scott says, first in, first out. Add more of everything you need, and then add a lot of dry goods like beans and rice and flour, sugar, those basic essentials. And number 10 cans, so they'll last a long time. That's where I would go next.
So it's funny that you said that because if we're bumping to the $1,000, my first round of $1,000 would go 100% towards water, food, and first aid. My next month, $1,000 would go to bullets, a pew, and a bigger first aid kit. Right? $1,000. It doesn't go a long ways, but you don't have to buy brand new, right? You can search classifieds. There's gun exchanges. There are other options. You don't have to go broke right away. But having that protection, right? Whatever your plan is, I would definitely jump to protection and jump that to the front as quick as I could. But yeah,
what do you mean there, Mike? Rat hole, $100. Add one. I'm not following you there. A little elaboration would be nice.
that's interesting.
But yeah, I totally agree with you, Scott. We always talk about, again, the survival rules of 3. We have added protection. That's not necessarily on the survival rules of 3. Maybe 3 days. I don't know. But having some way to protect what you've already acquired and take care of your family. For me, that's a really important part is firearm, ammunition, and training. And that can get very expensive very quickly. So
it can. Like my handgun, just the base model right now is $900. So it's like you gotta be thoughtful about it. But then I also think about that because I'm like, okay, we've been prepping. In my brain, as we're doing the scenario, I'm like, we've been prepping on $100 for a while. Now I've got $1,000. So I guess maybe I'm just going for broke right off the bat. Because another big thing I'd want to do it on a month 2 or 3. Like I've got my $1,000 can go a long ways in food and water. If I'm not going freeze dried and I'm not going anything crazy and I'm just buying the basics, that goes a long way, right? But I would definitely get small. I wouldn't get a gas generator. I would get either a dual or tri-fuel generator and a small solar battery array and battery bank. Right? They call them solar generators, but the panels generate. The battery bank is completely different. It's just a power
It collects the energy.
Yeah, just
Yep.
stores energy for when you need it. Those are great. I actually saw a story yesterday of a guy who was running his generator after Beryl hit in Houston. This was a while ago. And his HOA came and put a letter on his door saying that if he keeps running it, they're going to call the police because it's a noise ordinance violation for their community.
When the power's out for everyone.
And the power's out for everyone. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. That's a problem. Like, and they're not that loud. Like, I don't know, maybe he's got his connected to an airplane, but they're not that loud. Most generators are, I mean, they're loud. Everyone knows it's there. But yeah, quiet. I like quiet. I like stealthy. It's a lot more fun. But yeah, $1,000. You could do so much more with $1,000. I would get building supplies, screws, nails, hammers. After I've got my food taken care of, after I've got my first aid taken care of, I would hop on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, and all the other local classifieds and be looking for bigger and better containers for my water storage. I would start adding in water bath canning as part of my process and system. Get a good pressure canner. I've got one. It's fantastic to have because there's so many different things you can do with it. But definitely start expanding that list pretty rapidly. I mean, with $1,000 a month, you can go pretty fast, pretty quick.
Well, like with what Rebecca had mentioned here, and I know you too, Scott, getting a battery bank for CPAP or so forth. I think you can power that all night with a battery bank that'll cost you between $300 and $400 potentially, with say the Jackery brand and so forth. I have the Goal Zero brand, and the 400 will power my wife's CPAP all night long, and it's a 400 watt hour. I think that's right. Yeah, 400 watt hour, and that lasts all night.
This little guy cost $168, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I can run my CPAP for 3 days, 3 nights on one charge.
Nice.
And here's the thing: turn off the humidifier, and your wife's CPAP can run for a week probably on your battery.
Okay.
But this Opus is how it's pronounced. OUPES, and also Lion Energy. We've got links on our website. If you go to preppertalkradio.com, we've got links that'll get you those gear, the gear that we actually use, right? We want to share with you guys what we use, what we like. I think that's the most affordable option in solar banks and arrays and just battery banks. But it's super easy. And man, I'm so glad I have it now because it just makes life easier. I've got my big generator to run the freezer and everything else that I need to keep on while I'm trying to preserve food. But this is medicinal purpose only, I guess. I don't know. Life-saving device. But it's easy.
And do you have the solar panels for it too, Scott?
Yep. I got a small fold-out array. So it takes me all day to recharge, but I mean, I only need to run it a third of the power down per day. And what's funny is when I ran it on with the humidifier on, I barely made it 6.5 hours. But if I turn the humidifier off on my CPAP,
right,
I could go 3 nights. It was amazing the difference in what I used.
We talked about Second Amendment resources in the $1,000 range yet? Because I think that if you want to get some way to protect yourself, no, I mean, you can purchase a firearm for a relative, a couple $100, $500 if at the most, I think, if you really want to go for it. But I would say, you can get Susan Ann asked the question here. Do you have a recommendation for a good pew for a newbie? And my recommendation is to go to a range and tell the people there that you're brand new, you don't really have a lot of experience, and ask them to show you some guns that would fit your hand, and take those guns onto the range and then practice with them. And if it feels good in your hand, that's the recommendation. If it feels good when you shoot it, if you don't feel like you got a lot of recoil or whatever. That's the best way to pick the firearm, is to just shoot different kinds until you find the one that just feels good in your hand and feels good when you fire it and feels
That
good
you
like
can shoot
aim it,
well.
and
Yeah.
you can shoot well and hit the target at least. That's where I would start. And then, from there you can kind of get the range of the dollar amounts for how much those might be. And then you can, save up for it or just get it all outright. So, and that the next thing after that is to get a good holster, to get a good cleaning kit. And you want to also get a good, stash of ammo and brass.
Yeah. And like Paris is saying, Susan, I think my recommendation, what I would suggest is, obviously you can't go wrong with Glock. And there is also CZ called the P10. It's very much like a Glock, and Glock is going to be a little more expensive. But you could also go to, like Scott mentioned, there are gun exchanges. There's Utah Gun Exchange here locally, where you can find used ones for some savings. And don't be concerned about buying a used gun. I've done it many times, and you can typically get a quality firearm that has not been abused and that is almost like new. So that's where I would go, especially if you're budget conscious. And I have a lot of other recommendations as well, but those are two simple that you just can't go wrong with.
Great point. It's funny because Practical jumped in real quick, and I agree and disagree. Depends on where you're going for your gun shops. If you're going to a gun shop, hopefully here's my recommendation. Don't go to a gun shop right off the bat. If you have available to you, gun shows where they've got 20 different guys selling different types of guns, go there and look at pricing, right? But go to the gun shop, like Paris said, to go practice and try out a whole bunch of ones and see what you like. And then go to the gun show, because you can find a lot of used guns at gun shows. And that, I think, use the best. Use exactly what Paris said, to go test them out, because now you're testing them out in a safe place with someone who can help you make sure you're not doing something wrong. And then just hold the line and be like, you know what, I need to think about this. I'm not making a decision today, especially if they start talking about a Desert Eagle. Yeah.
Yeah, don't want to buy that.
Yeah, that's kind of extreme, right? But yeah, most gun shops will have rental counters, and go on, and it would definitely be best to take someone with you who knows what they're talking about, can help you with basic gun safety and grip and trigger control and so forth. Because if you don't know how to pull a trigger on a gun, you don't know how to hold it properly, you don't know if it's going to fit your hand well, if you're going to be able to shoot it well, if you don't already know some of the basics of handgun shooting. Handgun is one of the more difficult disciplines to learn and to be good at. Anybody can really step up and shoot a rifle, but that's not a great option for self-defense in most cases. But I am very much a handgun guy, and I could talk for hours, so I'll shut up.
Okay, so we're still in the $1,000 range. I forgot to also mention, I would stock up on medical supplies, like my prescriptions. I would stock up. You can do that through our good friends, Jace Medical. If you use the code PrepperTalk over there, actually, yeah, that'll save $10 at checkout. But also, get Nicole Lepellion's book. Get as many wild medicinal books you can get, natural homeopathy, and start learning those things. Put that in your library. Start building a library. Head on over to IKEA, grab some crates and build a library, stack it to the wall, whatever you need to do, right? Put some shelves somewhere and start building a library, because at one point, if the grid's ever down, you're not going to be able to Google your way out of this. How do I use a tourniquet? What kind of treatment can I use to fix this issue that now I'm suffering with, right? Learn how to do poultices and learn how to do all the different treatments, because you're not going to have a resource to go find it when you need it. You got to start learning that now.
All right. So sounds like we need to move on. So I'm thinking for the 10K discussion, I think this is like a one-time investment. If you have a budget of 10K, what would you get? And of course, that's assuming, in my opinion, we already have the basics covered, right? You've already got your basic bug out bag or go bag, and you spent $1,000 on food storage or whatever. of course, the first instinct is just to stack more food. And it really depends on your goal, where you live, if you've got if you're gardening, if you're already producing your own food, and so forth. I think that food should be the priority. Obviously, going back to the survival rules of 3, I always go back to those: shelter, water, food; shelter, water, food; shelter, water, food; protection. And so, at the 10,000 level, I'm thinking, and depending on where you live and what your plans are, for me, it's like, okay, how about like a camp trailer for bugging out, right? Having some kind of an enclosed trailer so that you can take your stuff with you to grandma's house as part of your bug out plan. Something like that, right? I don't think it should necessarily, and maybe it is, okay, let's add a shotgun to the kit, right? Let's add a hunting rifle or a 22, something like that, to where you can get more food or defend yourself better or so forth. But, I think a lot of us gun guys, we think, okay, I got 10 grand to spend here. I'm going to go spend $2,000 on a quality AR or more. Cause you could obviously, like Mike says, you can spend a lot of money on handguns, rifles, whatever, but is that the best use of that money? Right. Probably not at that price point. I think that you'd have to be much higher than that.
So if I had $10,000 and could do whatever I wanted to prep wise with it, whether I was like, I'd go back to the $100 stuff. If I'm brand new to prepping, I would go back and listen to the first thing that we just talked about. And I'd buy all that at once, right? Get all that stuff done. Round 1. And with the last remaining, $5,000 of that, because you can get a lot for $5,000, I would probably buy a crap ton of survival frog meat. Because it's going to be more expensive to stockpile your freeze drieds and your number 10 cans, all that, the big stuff, the really, really good stuff. I'd get a crap ton of that. And then my next month, I would probably buy a freeze dryer. And if I could, well, and I would also look at getting a Bluetti whole backup system. When it comes to solar battery banks, I'm kind of partial to that. That's one of the ones we've gotten. The Bluetti is just fantastic as far as quality, longevity, service. They have great customer service. I would look at those as well. But I'd go big. At that point, I'd start going big and get big time backups. Keep everything stealthy as possible, quiet as possible. I'd start planting big thorn bushes around my property. I would put in some big water tanks. I mean, I could go crazy. I
tend to agree with you on the backup power, because obviously that is, I think, a very serious threat to us is losing power, and really it is, I think, more of a convenience to have power, to the type of power that we can produce ourselves, right? It's for running the fridge, it's for running the CPAP, it's for some lighting, it's for some communication devices. We really would take a lot more than 10 grand to invest into your whole home solar type system. So really the solar or battery bank you'd be able to afford with some solar panels would be for conveniences. Really, probably not to run a fridge even for any kind of extended period of time. Because most battery banks, you're talking 2-3 days, maybe a week with your fridge, with some solar input, depending on the size. You're still spending half of that 10 grand on that, if that's your goal.
Easily.
Yeah, I did. I bought a solar power bank with like several 100-watt power panels to be able to charge it while it's being used, so that it can. That's another way to kind of make sure that will last longer. That you're charging it. It's got longer cables so that you can do that. Anyways, that was about $4 or $5 grand. Just that one set. I had a good month one last couple of years ago, and I used that money for that. And so, if I had 10 grand, I would do a lot of what Scott said and go back and kind of double up on some of the things. And then even what some of the stuff that Shane said is just kind of redundancy, because one is, with $100 or $1,000, maybe you only have one of something. Well, now that you have 10 grand, you can maybe go get a second one or a backup or a redundant, something similar that would do something a little different, but also give you that same, like, for example, I have a dual fuel generator, which is $700 or $800 at Costco with gas and propane. Well, I bought I bought a power bank. So now I have the solar energy and the solar ability to create energy for that. So it's different, but does the same thing. And that's what I use that money for. So I would say, if you have 10 grand plus and you've already done all those basic things, maybe it's time to go and, double up or get a second or third of something. So that way you have multiples in your stash.
Again, I didn't do this one yet, but I gotta fit this in. I would get a really cool. I'd buy and construct a really big greenhouse and aquaponic system within the greenhouse.
That's awesome.
I would. Oh, that would be so awesome. I actually just sold because we're getting prepped to move. I'm trying to get the yard ready, trying to get everything ready. I sold some of my water tanks. I had these 270 gallon IBC totes. I sold 3 of these to a guy, and that's what he's going to build. He's like, "Yeah, I just bought a greenhouse," and I'm like, "Oh, I just sold my greenhouse. I could have sold you all of this at once." And he's like stoked. I'm like, "That is my next dream. Like my next place. If I had the 10 grand, I'd go big on the greenhouse, aquaponics. Next month, I'd plant a whole bunch of orchard trees. That would be." I would geek out at that point. I don't think I'd ever leave.
Yeah.
Unless I had to. And lots of toilet paper. Stockpile or get some bidets.
Yeah. Above 10 grand, I would say, what does our buddy have? That zombie apocalypse car that he has. That's super awesome. So, the trailers, stuff that you can do camping with. Most of the trailers nowadays are more than 10 grand, but at least get started toward having something like that where you can actually take your bug out location with you and be okay. So, the higher end stuff, that's where I'd go. I'm saving up for a new truck and I'm saving up for I don't know if I want a fifth wheel or if I want to have an axle. Anyways, I want to have a trailer that I can pull, that I can camp in, live, cook, have bedding, stuff like that, where I'm not glamping a little bit more than I guess camping. So I can have a little bit of the modern technology, but still have it be portable and real easy to take with me.
So you're going to stay at the Apocalypse, the Shea Apocalypse Hotel,
right?
Well, I totally agree with you, Scott. I would do something with a greenhouse, or for a garden to improve your soil in a garden, order seeds, those types of things. Get the tools you need, hand tools you need, maybe a tiller, and those types of things. I think that would be great to fit under the 10K. But also, like you, Paris, I think it's very important. It is for me to have a good vehicle that can get me out of trouble. And obviously, you guys know the bugging out's my plan. We have a location already, and I've got an enclosed trailer to load up and get there, which I've been using to get my construction materials up to the property. And so I think, above the 10K level, that's what's really important for me, is to be able to get the family out of Dodge, because and that's my goal, and that's where I want to live, not just because I want to bug out. I believe we're going to have to someday. It's because that's where I want to live and retire. And so that's just part, and maybe that's not part of a bug out budget, right? Or a prepping budget. It's just a lifetime budget. And so that's very important for me. And an RV was very important for me. Obviously, when we first started the property, we have to have a place to stay, right? We're building the structures there. We had to have an RV to stay in there, which makes for a great bug out vehicle, especially if you don't have a dedicated location for a bug out. It leaves you open to different options for bugging out. I think Practical said he's got multiple locations and where he travels to instead of one fixed location. So that may be part of your plan.
Amen. Well, guys, thank you all so much. This has been an awesome live.
Oh, wow.
The comments have been fantastic. Appreciate every single one of you. Prepping is not for quitters, right? Quitters aren't going to make it. Prepping are for people who have hope, who have a desire for a better quality of life, and who are get it doners, right? People who want to get things handled in their own lives so they don't have to worry about it. It's a stress relief. I love the practicality of it. And this was a fun episode because we just went into kind of the common sense all the way to the nonsensical, but having fun with it, but also things that we really want, right? For better quality of life and to be prepared. It's all a double-edged sword, right? We're taking care of two things at once. I think that we all still have an opportunity to get better prepared right now, but we don't have much time.
I agree with
If
that.
you're not making efforts every day, you're going backwards. So don't let this scare you, but let this motivate you to be better engaged in your personal preparedness endeavors. It is National Preparedness Month, but I want to remind you, it should be Personal Preparedness Day every day. Go through your checks and balances, look what you need to improve on, hop into our group, Emergency Prep and Self-Reliance, over on Facebook. Check out our website. We've done a huge, massive amount of upgrades to that thing, preppertalkradio.com. Check out all of our resources. We love you guys. We appreciate you guys. We're so excited every week to have these lives and get the engagement because we learn. Last thing I wanted to say before I wrap it up is thank you. I'm not going to say your name, but one of our listeners, I made a comment a few weeks ago based on information I thought was accurate. I've since learned it was not. I talked about cell phones and how they were not connecting to GPS. Satellite for GPS, which neither here nor there. They weren't for what I was explaining. Here's the thing. I was wrong. And one of our listeners let us know. And I was like, wait a minute. Let me find out. I did a ton of digging in the last week and a half since he pointed it out. I am so grateful for our audience for having the ability to tell us, like, if I'm wrong, let me know. Like, we've all been wrong. And it's fantastic to be able to have that and to be able to come back. And I want to thank him personally on air. This isn't the first time someone's corrected me. Appreciate all of you guys. But we only get better when we communicate. We only get better together. So thank you, everyone, for participating. Thank you, everyone, for teaching us as much as we teach you. We're really making this fun. Any final comments or thoughts on the event tonight?
Nope.
I mean,
Just
we
make
could
sure
go on for
Make
hours.
sure you get a budget and then use it.
Yeah. Make a budget and then blow it all on prepping stuff. Guys, thank you for listening to Prepper Talk Radio. This is radio for the ready-minded. Keep that head on a swivel and that hand on your budget so you're not wasting money on frivolous things. Go get prepped. Have fun. Until next time, stay ready.
See you next week.
Take care.